come to order. And I'd like to welcome everyone and thank you so much again for joining us today. And I'd like to start off with a couple of the technical assistance instructions. So Francis, if you could just move to that slide really quick. Again, we're going to be enabling the audio for all commissioners, but just to avoid background noise, we're going to ask you to mute yourself like we usually do if you're not speaking, and click on the raised hand icon next to your name in the participant list if you'd like to respond or make a comment. And then to everyone else, you are muted upon entry, and we're going to enable audio for participants during the public comment period of this hearing. And we'll call on people in the order that they registered for public comment, either through email. And then if you'd like to still comment but didn't do so in advance, you can do so during. You can register to offer comment during this meeting, and you can do that through the chat option. And if you are on the phone, you can also call in or text in your interest in offering comment, and the number is 646-763-2189. And when we get to the comment period, Francis, who's the meeting host, will enable the audio and call on the dial-in participants after pre-registered participants. Francis, did we, just for my own preparation, did we receive any requests to offer comment?
No, we did not.
Okay, thank you. And then if you'd like to enable the captioning, you can do that under more options, which is the icon with the ellipses on your screen's menu control bar for WebEx. And you should see, if you click on those ellipses, you should see closed captioning option, which you can click on to select. So to start us off, Francis, you can stop the screen sharing, and then we're just going to do an attendance call. So if you could please just say here when I call your name, that would be awesome. Let me just get the names. So Chuck Apelian. Murad Awaude.
Present.
Eve Barron.
Present.
Holly Bonner.
Present.
Amy Braidla.
Present.
Mark Diller.
Present.
Lori Fiorotto.
Present.
Donna Gill.
Present.
Anthony Hartman. Jose Hernandez.
Present.
Linda Lee. Lillian Perez.
Present.
Aneta Sicharan.
Present.
Anastasia Sosa.
Present.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone. Just for the record, my name is Sarah Said, and I'm one of the 15 commissioners who make up the Civic Engagement Commission and also the chair and executive director. And I know that we sent you a last minute in the agenda, so I want to make sure everyone received the updated agenda. And we do have a vote on an amendment today to the Commission's resolution, which I had mentioned in the last meeting. So when we sent out the agenda yesterday, we didn't actually include that. So earlier today, we sent you an updated agenda, which I'm going to just put into the chat just in case everyone doesn't have it. Paste. Well, Francis, can you help me with that? I'm trying to do that here, but let me just try one more time. Oh, there it is. Okay. Oh, see that? It looks like it's on there twice or 3 times. Sorry about that. Okay. So the second thing on the agenda after attendance is voting on the minutes from our last commission meeting, in which we also voted on the rule for interpreters and our language access plan. So again, I want to make sure everyone got the minutes. Is there anyone who does not have minutes? All set? Okay, so are there any additions or corrections to the minutes presented? Okay, since I'm not hearing any comments, I'm assuming there are no edits. So would someone like to make a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed to approving the minutes, say nay. All right, thank
Not
you. So the-
opposed, but I abstained just because I wasn't here for that.
Okay, thank you, Murad. So we are going to approve the minutes with one abstention. And we will make a note of that. Thank you. Okay, the next thing on the agenda, the amendment to the Civic Engagement Commission resolution. So part of what's going on is that right now, we have a bunch of reporting we have to do as a city agency, right? And some of that reporting is required for us to vote on. And that's specified in the charter. There's also a bunch of other reports that CEC staff have to work on for other needs from the administration, our internal reports, etc. And what the resolution as it's written now, under paragraph G of subdivision 2, it talks about the commission that we are responsible for the preparation of reports that must be submitted to the commission, to city officials and the public pursuant to law. And it doesn't kind of give us clarity on whether we need to do all the reports that we must submit to commit city officials, whether we need to bring those to meetings with you all, or whether we may submit some things without coming to meetings. So what the law department recommended is repealing that clause, repealing that paragraph, and adding a clause to the end of the resolution, which says that we will prepare and submit reports, or that I will, as chair and executive director, prepare and submit reports on behalf of the commission as required by law, provided that I receive commission approval to submitting a report required by Chapter 76 of the Charter, and other reports that we've already submitted from not having the clarity, that you will approve of those reports, and going forward, that we would only focus on bringing to vote specific reports. And those reports, we also sent you a list of the kinds of reports that we are currently responsible for. And please keep in mind that this list is in motion. There have been reports, that there will likely be reports that we'll need to do that are not on this list, that they'll just continue to change. And some reports are meant to be internal to administration, and then they get funneled into other bigger reports from the administration. And at the top of the list of reports that we sent you, we listed the reports that we know will require our vote. And those include the annual report of the Pole Site Language Assistance Program and Citywide Participatory Budgeting Program. And then there's an annual report of Community Board Assistance, and the Language Access Plan, which we voted on last time, and then for any changes to the pole site methodology. So then under that list, we had a bunch of reports we're doing. For example, we needed to report out on how we use identifying, or how we collect identifying information, what types of information we collect for local laws 245 and 247, and every agency is also required to have an agency privacy officer. And then other types of reports include like our continuity of operations plans for, since the pandemic, and then reports on equity, our use of ethnic and community media. So these are the kinds of data that we need to submit on an ongoing basis. And in order to sort of streamline and make the process a little efficient so that it doesn't have to get voted on every time for our submissions to our internal agency requirements, we are proposing this resolution, or sorry, the amendment to the resolution. So does anyone have any questions or concerns about the amendment? Okay, no, it's not, there's no questions.
hang on.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So are this is Civic printing, I'm not sure why. Oh, okay. I was trying to print out that list that you're just providing us. Is the list of reports that will come to a vote more or less exhaustive, at least as of current knowledge?
The ones on the top, the reports requiring commission vote, yes, it's the annual report for annual report for all of our programs, which includes the poll site assistance, PB, community board work, the language access plan, and then the poll site methodology. That's, to our understanding, those are the 4 that are specifically noted in the charter as commission reports that the law department says require the commission's vote.
Okay. So those are the ones that we're ratifying through this new proposed section 7.
Yes. No, yes. But we haven't voted on, we haven't brought some of those reports to vote. The one report we did bring was the language access plan, which we did last meeting. And then the poll site methodology, we went through our proposed and, hearing and proposed methodology and hearing around that. And we had to vote on both the proposed and the final. This doesn't include the rule that we voted on, because that's not a report, it's a rule. But we still have not, done the annual reports for the program. So when those are done, we will then, vote on them.
I guess my only reluctance is I'm always a little concerned about approving something I don't know what I'm approving. So I'm happy to approve those things that have already happened. And I don't want to bog the commissioners down with minutia that is properly yours to do. I am familiar, for example, with the the collection and disclosure of data form that you have to fill out, because I had to do the same thing, and I wouldn't wish that on anybody. So thank you for doing that, and I don't need to see it. Is there a way that we can sort of be apprised of what these reports are, just as a general matter? It doesn't have to be in the resolution, just so if anybody's curious about one of these things, because it's not an exhaustive list, that if any of us is interested or curious about what it is, that we can look it up, and if it becomes something that we want to be involved with, then we can, but otherwise have the default position be that we approve. Is that possible? Does that make sense? Am I the only one who's worried about this?
No, Mark, I am also. And can you guys hear me?
Sure can.
This is Donna. I am with Mark on some of this, and only because as a transparency issue, because if we go out and someone asks us a question about a report that was submitted that we didn't know about or we weren't privy to, we may not be able to answer the question. So I think, of course, as Mark says, I don't want to be bogged down in minutia and certain things that, that the commission is required to do, be it internally or externally. We don't necessarily have to be 100% involved in all of this. And I see where this is helping with efficiency because I know the paperwork, sorry, excuse me. I know the paperwork is actually what's important to get these things done. And I'm also concerned about, things that we may want to know about that we are signing away or giving you the this this waiver or authority to create and submit these reports in our name, and we are not privy to them. So that's I don't know if it's paranoia, but that was my thought. So
Yeah,
maybe Carol, you can explain it a little bit better to him.
I don't
Well,
think it's just for comment. I don't think it's paranoid, and I appreciate the desire for transparency. So I'd like to hear other comments on this.
looks like Amy has her hand up.
Amy, yes.
I understand what my fellow commissioners are saying, both Mark and Donna, but at the same time, I'm wondering if the chief restart officer needs to come before us. I imagine that you would say, we've submitted this report, here it is, do you want to vote on it? I don't know how much into detail the commission would get into those things. So while there's transparency, I feel like I would vote to approve without not necessarily going through it and understanding it. So I'm just offering that in as part of the dialogue. I understand what you're doing. I think that what the law department has done is put the 4 reports that are most critical for us to see as still having the voting rights to do so. But some of this is really agency paperwork, and I'm not sure that I need to see it in order to approve it. Just my.
Yeah, if I could clarify, I'm not proposing that I need to see the report. I would just like to have a list of what the reports are so that if there's some interest in what they are, I can follow up. And as Donna said, if somebody says, Mark, what did how in the world did you support XYZ report? I'll be able to say, well, I did, if I wanted to dig into it. I don't feel terribly strongly about this, but I because the big 4 are ones that we will vote on, and I certainly don't want to slow up the works and make things wait for another commission meeting. I just don't want to look like an idiot when somebody asks me a question. That's all.
So so what I'm hearing is that you would like to see a list of the reports that we are responsible for and that we may have submitted or are yet to be submitted, and to be able to inquire to see those specific reports. Is there a frequency with which you recommend we share such a list?
Well, are the most of the reports annual?
Some are quarterly. It really varies.
I would think annually, and just the list, not the reports themselves, just the list. And then if I'm motivated to ask a question, and like I said, this does not need to be in the resolution. This is just how we work with one another. Just so that I have the option of learning more about what goes on in case that becomes an issue or becomes something that I would want to follow up on.
I think that, yeah, go ahead. And someone else was speaking?
Lillian, hand raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to the discussion that I agree. I would like to see what I'm sort of voting for before I vote. I agree with most that I don't need to see the full reports, but maybe the name of the report and a blurb of what it's in it is sufficient for me to vote on it. But voting, just listing that I'm voting for something is not enough for me to vote. So I would suggest before voting, maybe a week before, if you have access to this information, give us a list of each report with a very short blurb. It doesn't even have to be a paragraph about each.
So it sounds like we're not, would you like to vote on the amendment today or wait to see a fuller description of the report and vote on the amendment next time? We can send you the more, I guess, just with more additional details on the list.
Are there any consequences based on the timing? In other words, are we going to be out of compliance?
I don't think so. I mean, we submitted things that we needed to submit, like for instance, every quarter we need to report out on our use of community and ethnic media to the Mayor's Office of Operations. So we've been doing that. Just requests for like, what are our continuity operations? So we've been taking care of things as they come up. So I don't think there's any deadline that'll be missed, for example, to my knowledge anyway. I don't.
When are we
Yeah.
when are we meeting next?
We can meet next, well, it's now at the end of September, but we can meet sort of closer to the election or immediately after the election.
In light of the fact that we are raising this issue now, I'm personally comfortable with voting on it today, with a note that moving forward, more information will be shared in advance of our meetings.
We can also send you the list that we did send out of the reports that are due now. We can send you a revised document that shows which ones have been submitted and which ones are still in process, or that we need to kind of update on an ongoing basis, so and then if you want to see any of those reports, we can share them with you.
Holly, would you like to say something?
Yeah, in light of that, I mean, I am not comfortable voting on that today. I would prefer to wait to the next meeting. I don't know if I'm alone with the other commissioners with that, but I just feel like if we're not out of compliance, then we should be able to wait.
I think Lillian agreed with that, or is there?
I do. If there are no consequences, why not wait? And we all will be fully aware of what we're voting for. As Mark mentioned, if I'm asked, I mean, it will sound stupid, but I will have to say I voted for 4 items, but I don't have the details about them.
Yeah, sorry, can I go?
Yes, I'm sorry. I keep muting myself. Maybe I should just leave go ahead, Murad.
I agree with Annetta, but I also agree with Lillian. I think if there is no urgency right now, and Holly, if there's no urgency right now in getting this approved, that we should hold off to our next meeting. But I do think that we should probably standardize the time in which we receive reports or all of this, all the documents, just to ensure that we're having at least like a week or two. I know sometimes that won't be possible, but it would be great if that is a possibility whenever we can.
So just to make sure that I'm clear on the next steps on this, it sounds like some people would like to wait, so I am okay waiting until people are more comfortable with voting. And what we need to do is send you the list of reports with another column that says whether we've submitted them or not, give you an opportunity to ask to see any of those submitted reports. We can share those with you. And then when we come back to vote the next time, you'll have a better sense of what you are voting to approve that was submitted already. That sound right? I can understand needing to see them. So did I miss any? I just want to make sure I'm clear. And that we were going to do this annually. We're going to give you the list annually. Or do we want it with more frequency?
I would think annually, but that's just me.
Okay.
I will say, as long as we get it, it doesn't have, how often do these reports have to be filed? Because I'd like to know before we have to vote on them. Are we voting on them annually all together, in case we have questions before we vote? Because in other words, giving you approval to vote on all of them, but maybe when you prepare these reports, there will be changes or new laws. I don't know, and you already gave you the go ahead to vote on them. So what? It wouldn't make sense to me. I think for me, it would make more sense to get them the meeting before they're due, so they're fresh. Or is that a lot of work?
Well, let's just clarify. So the kind of report, for example, that we're talking about, well, the bigger goal here is that we want to distinguish between reports that we know based on the charter you need to vote on, right? For sure. So there are already several reports that are like that. One is we went through the proposed and final methodology. So anytime we want to revise the poll site language assistance program methodology, that would need to go through public hearing and vote. Then the language access plan, which we voted on last time, that's something that will need to be voted on if there's a change or something. And then we are required to submit annual reports for the commission, so those will need to get voted on, but that reporting requirement doesn't go into effect until 2022. So that's why we didn't give you an annual report, or don't have an annual report right now. So that report would also need to be voted on. But then all the other things that we need to submit inside the administration for interagency requirements and other reports that the administration needs to compile from collecting data from agencies. And this also includes things like every agency is a very concrete example. The city is engaged in test and trace operations, right? And census, outreach, complete count. Every agency was actually required to share information on like how much outreach we did for those initiatives. And those kinds of metrics are reported on a weekly basis. And that kind of report, what we're proposing under this amendment is that we wouldn't need to show you the report and get you to vote on it in order to submit it. And what in the discussion, we're identifying this tension of people, and also, sorry, let me backtrack a little. In the amendment, we're also saying that anything the commission has submitted up until this point, you've approved those, you approve those because one, it was already done, but we're clarifying the amendment to indicate the reports that will need your approval. Before, the language was very broad and it just said reports. Reports to city officials. Does that make sense, Lillian?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Sarah,
So,
Mhm.
Donna?
Yes. From what I'm understanding, and you just clarified it, it's these reports that we submit whenever they're due are not reports that actually needs to be voted on. It's just reports that needs to be submitted. And what you're asking us to do is to vote, to allow you to continue because this is what you have been doing. So for me, I think that if we put a caveat with the amendment saying that the commissioners would be, would have access to, as Mark is asking, and know, about these different reports, then we will be able to, because these are not voting items, correct? These reports that you're actually doing are not voting items per se. They're just reports that are requirements. That have to
Yes.
be, yeah.
Yes,
So,
that's correct, but we also have to remember we're talking here about how we understand the language of the resolution, right? In the prior or the current wording, it's very general. So someone can say, hey, this says reports to city agencies. You should have showed us all these reports and we should have voted on them. And under that, under the current language, that could be, a problem. So, and what we're saying is, no, we want to make the language more clear. So should we make like a motion to decide whether or not we're going to vote today? I'm wondering what the best step is here.
well, okay, so I would like to make a motion to vote today and to have a friendly resolution that the commissioners are informed of these reports and they have access to them. They know what they are and they have access to delve deeper into the report. I don't know how to phrase that, but Mark is the good person to do that. And I think, because actually, if we're holding it off until the next meeting, this is already happening. These reports have already been filed, some of them, correct?
Yes.
Yes, so if we're holding it off to the next meeting, then we're actually taking something into another meeting that could have been resolved at this meeting just by us getting this information and putting that caveat on there, as knowing that commissioners are aware and they have access to get these reports. And this is what you said you will do. So that's my motion. I mean, it's kind of long, but that's the motion.
So do we want to have to summarize your motion, it is to vote today with the resolution understanding that we will inform the commissioners of the reports and give you access to the reports going forward.
That's correct.
Would anyone like to, do I hear a second on that motion?
I second it, as long as we can have access to the information.
I'm sorry, you cut out a little bit. Could you repeat that?
I said I second the motion, as long as it's clear, we're gonna have access to this information. I think Mark is not needed, that's why he is.
Okay, so maybe does this make sense to just do a roll call vote at this point? Because I don't know if or should we just say, are there, just say,
So if I could jump in for a sec.
yeah,
I wasn't going to require the resolution to include this, but Donna's motion does seem to want it. So what I think we're looking at is at the end of the first sentence of the new paragraph 7 to say something, because that's where it says that you'll obtain commission approval of the reports that are required by Chapter 76. If I understood Donna correctly, then the rest of that sentence would read, and the chair will provide at least annually a list of reports not requiring commission approval. It's just a list. It's not the reports themselves. And then it's on us if we want to ask about them or do anything about that. Donna, does that work for you? Is that what you were looking for?
Yes.
so the edit or the addition would read, in full, prepare and submit reports on behalf of the commission as required by the law, provided that the chair must receive commission approval prior to submitting a report required by Chapter 76 of the New York City Charter. The chair should provide a list of reports not requiring commission approval annually. And the commission hereby ratifies and approves any reports submitted by the chair to public officials prior to the date of adoption of this subdivision.
Yeah, that's basically it.
Okay,
You might want to throw a comma in after New York City Charter.
rather than a period.
Yeah, I think so, because then the provided will modify both this Chapter 76 and the non-Chapter 76. Grammatically, I think that'll help you.
I see. Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
It's a process question regarding the reports and their availability to us. Is the idea that we request the reports that we're interested in, or are they being made available to us in some repository?
So far, I've heard that you would request anything that you are interested in seeing.
Other than the mandatory ones, other than the Chapter 76, which we would see as a matter of course before voting on. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I just wanted clarification for that. So we would request via email.
Right.
Thanks.
So there is an edit, and is there a motion to approve the edit to the amendment?
Donna, that would be you.
Absolutely. There's a motion to approve the edit to the amendment.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, and all in favor of approving the edit, please say aye.
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 Are there any opposition? Is there any opposition to approving the edit to the amendment? If you would please say nay. Okay, so we will, based on everyone's vote, we will go ahead and approve the amendment today with the edit.
So do I need to move the resolution as amended?
Yes.
So I so move.
That's a second. The resolution is amended, yep.
All right, so I move that we adopt the resolution as amended. I'm sorry. I guess I'm moving adopt the amendment as amended. Is that what I'm doing?
Yes.
It's a
The
little cumbersome,
amendment
this
as
language.
amended, yes, exactly.
Okay, so I so move.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any objections? Any opposition? Say nay. Okay, awesome. So we approve the amendment as amended. Thank you for that. I know that a couple of you told us that you might have to leave a little early, so I just want to quickly jump into the program updates. We actually have a bunch of things to share with you, so I prepared a little bit of a PowerPoint to get us through that efficiently, because the biggest thing we want to talk about, I guess, is the poll site program that's coming up that we will be rolling out for the general election and then move into some other things. And we've been, during the pandemic, really keeping active with all of the program areas and doing a bunch of other work as well. It's been really, I really want to thank the commission staff for all the hard work they've been doing. So for, yes, thank you, Amy. I see your hand waving. So for the For the language assistance program, we wanted to just go through a couple of overarching goals for the year. One is, and we can share out this PowerPoint with you afterwards as well. But really what we want to try to do, and we know this from the methodology, that we are building on Moya's pilot program, and we're going to be serving more languages that then have been served in the past through the language assistance program, which is really exciting. And what we're going to be doing, as we agreed to in the methodology, is that we're going to increase the number of days we're serving by including, for the moment, the last weekend of early voting, and that will be subject to revision of the methodology as we go forward. But immediately, that's what we're going to do in November. And we've been having a lot of conversations inside the administration as well as with partners on how they're going to be messaging around this election to really encourage people to vote early and absentee voting during the pandemic, just for safety reasons. So we want to make sure that our program is aligned with that. And that's part of why it's important for us to, encourage people to vote early and support them as they vote early. So we'll be doing that. And then for the remainder of the year, we've been starting to have conversations about how ranked choice voting will go into effect in January. And we're going to need to do a bunch of education citywide about the changes to voting, and of course, support that in limited English proficient communities. And one thing we really do want to focus on, this is the last bullet, is that want to make sure that as we're providing services, we really support utilization by having outreach to inform people of the services as much as possible in a very targeted way within the election districts where the city language assistance providers will be supporting individuals to have translation. So those are the overarching goals. If we could move to the next slide. We are also, are we stuck? Okay. We thought through how we were going to sort of spend the allocation that we have, and given all the changes in voting, we felt it was important to make sure that we were supporting the ranked choice education in the coming year, and then also thinking about the need to, for example, potentially hire additional backup interpreters and coordinators. There's a bunch of things that we had to consider as we thought about how to actually figure out the number of sites we'd be serving. And this is where we landed, which is to try to, as much as possible, serve in as many elections as possible. So we're not just accounting for the general in November, but also the primary in June. And then we have special elections that'll be taking place. And the number of special elections is yet to be determined. But we thought of doing in the last cycle, when in-person interpretation was provided in the general, it was about 101 or 102 sites, I believe. So trying to keep with that total, we are going to be serving 100 poll sites in November, but those 100 will be broken out over the day of the election, as well as early voting weekend days. So the combination would be like 52, sorry, that the total is actually 102, but 52, 25, and 25 for Saturday and Sunday. Do something similar for the primary in 2021, and then really to leverage the opportunity that special elections provide to test out messaging on ranked choice voting, which, people have an opportunity to practice through the special elections and then, get ready for the primary in June. So this is our thinking on the breakout for the number of sites we'll be serving. If we can move to the next slide, I'll just go through really quickly some of the major, I think the next one is on work streams that we have for how we're getting ready. Of course, we're working on selecting the sites. We just recently received a completed list from the New York City Board of Elections and applying our methodology to that list. We'll be identifying the actual sites. We have a bunch of different procurement work streams that are currently in play, including with working with the vendor, the big word, to hire interpreters and coordinators, including standbys, because I think we will need to recruit more than the usual amount of standbys, just because we're in a pandemic. And then we need to worry about, transporting the interpreters and coordinators and furniture rental for non-DOE sites, so people have a place to sit. And then there's also coordinating with each site where we drop off materials, furniture, check-in table for voters, etc. And then we designed some graphics, and we'll show you some of those graphics with Yasmani's help, our public artist in residence, we're currently hosting. And then we need to coordinate training and training for the interpreters and coordinators, which will happen in the next couple of weeks. Then there's outreach. We've been working on things like where are we going to place these ads, and then the Language Access Advisory Committee is working on a toolkit that will, plan out how this outreach will happen. We are going to be working with our interagency partners. And we are also, as part of this comms planning, we're working on PSAs that we'll be able to show you and share with you very soon, that are focused on know your rights and early voting. And then for data collection, we need to figure out, how we're going to monitor utilization and the process of reporting on the day of election. So there's a bunch of things, and I want to thank Gagan and Francis and Yasmani and others on the team, and Leslie, I don't think she's here with us right now, but really for helping work on this. So just to show you some of the graphics that we worked on, this is a tablecloth that will be displayed at every table. It's very bright and vivid, and people will be able to see clearly that this is where the interpreters or the language assistance providers are seated. And the next slide, this is tablecloth. Okay, thank you. And then we have some buttons that people will be wearing, and every language has a different color, and these colors are similar to the colors used by other agencies, or just a little, I think, potentially, possibly a little deeper, but parallel to other agencies who do this. So that's it on the language assistance program. Does anyone have any questions on that? Yes, Amy?
So when you say training for the coordinators and the interpreters, are the coordinators the BOE coordinators?
No. Gagan, you're on the line,
Yeah.
correct? You
Of
want to
course.
explain?
Yeah, and can folks hear me clearly? Okay,
Yes.
perfect. Yeah, so Amy, we're saying the name coordinators, but internally we're thinking of them as supervisors. They are not affiliated with the Board of Elections. Their role is to, they will have a cluster of sites, around 3 or 4. They will go to each of the sites throughout the day to continuously report utilization numbers and mitigate any issues that are coming up at the poll site, or amplify or flag any issues to the central team, which will be the CEC team. So we can reach out to the Board of Elections, or we can reach out to the site coordinator if it's a Department of Education site, and help mitigate any issues that come up.
Yeah, fortunately or unfortunately, I took the 4+ hours of training yesterday to be a poll worker, and I know Donna has done this for years. What was reported or said over and over again is tell the coordinator. That seems to be their mantra at the poll sites. And I bring it up because I'm just a little worried that we're so close to the election and that poll workers are being trained. It's an unprecedented year in terms of protocol within the polling sites. And I'm just afraid that it's going to be chaotic the day of the election if you don't have a lot of pre-buy-in, especially by these BOE coordinators who are running the polling sites. So I'm just bringing it out as I see potentially a process issue in getting the work done on the day of November 3rd, and maybe the early elections might be easier, but I'm particularly worried about November 3rd.
Yeah, I mean, first off, it's really great that you took the poll worker training. That's awesome. The second thing, I hear you on things getting hectic on November 3rd. We are, when we do the training with the coordinators, who internally we think of them as supervisors, we're going to run through many scenarios that might come up on election day and run through how they might be able to mitigate. And in terms of like the training dates for the supervisors and the interpreters, we're looking at the week of October 19th, specifically October 19th and the 21st, to hold trainings for both. And we will be using many interpreters that have worked the pilot program in the past. So there is some familiarity with the project, with the work, with the type of issues that may come up. In addition, we will send the Board of Elections the early voting sites that will be providing services, and the sites on election day will be providing services, so they can let their BOE coordinators and BOE staff know at those sites that we will be there. So that should help a little bit as well. Just one more thing, when we met with the Board of Elections, which was a lifetime ago, I think like in February or March, they created a email chain for the CEC and the Board of Elections for through which we can flag any issues on election day. So there's some things that we're putting in place to ensure that kind of that we're not overwhelmed on election day. But I really appreciate you amplifying that.
Thanks, Gagan, and thank you, Amy. Are there any other questions on the poll site program? We're all good? So we will be able to share where the poll sites are where we'll be providing services, and we would love to get help, again, we can also share the toolkit with you, and just to raise awareness about the services so that we can ensure people utilize them. Awesome. Okay, so if there are no other questions, we can go to the participatory budgeting program. So what we're doing here, because we don't have an allocation and we really can't do in-person assemblies at this time, and the program has been suspended for the duration of the emergency through executive order, we're trying to figure out how we can use this time to lay a foundation for a citywide program. And we know one of the pieces of that program will need to be an online process for generating ideas and voting. And this is actually a really good moment to experiment with that online need, complementing, the in-person assemblies. But so what we're doing is we're launching, very exciting, launching a platform called Decidim, which is an open source participatory democracy platform. And I think I've talked about it in past meetings, but it is currently used in 30 cities, 12 regions. And if the PB folks can just put the link to the platform into the chat, that would be really great, Wendy or Daniela. And what's really exciting about this platform is we are going to be the first city in the US to launch it. And right now we're thinking of launching it fairly close to it'll probably be mid-October. And right now we're going through a process of just making sure that the privacy requirements of the city and residents, that we're protecting those, because when people get onto the platform, they'll need to enter certain information to create an account. And so we're just making sure we clear all the requirements on that. And we are going to be using, or the way that Decidim is used in other cities is people have used it for citizen assemblies, or, virtual assemblies for residents, and then policy deliberation, participatory budgeting. And what it does is essentially provides an online space where people can provide input for decisions that directly impact them. And it's can also serve as a tool in the future for community boards to collect resident inputs and for agencies to collect inputs and ideas from people. Next slide. One of the first uses of Decidim will be a small demonstration project for young people with participatory budgeting. And we decided we would launch this very small demonstration project with some of our own expense funding. So we will be contributing or creating a process that involves about 5 projects at $20,000 each, where we will create an opportunity for young people to generate ideas, and then those ideas will be channeled into an opportunity for CBOs to propose how to address those ideas, and young people will vote on the proposals. And we're looking to really work with young people because they're disconnected from government decision-making for the most part. So we want to create an opportunity for them, and according to the charter, youth are among the segments of the population that we are charged, to work with. And also want to make sure that we are working in high needs communities that have been hit hard by COVID. And also we're using the Citizens Committee for Children's Wellbeing Index to really identify communities where we'll be focusing our outreach, and hoping that we can go through a process of launching the portal, idea generation in October, November, and then CBOs submit proposals on these ideas November, December. Then we vote on the proposals in January and make these small, awards to CBOs in January. So this will be a really great opportunity for us to just have a way to test out the platform, test out the process. And to do that, something we did over the summer, we had a great partnership with Coro. If you could go to the next slide, Francis, where we had youth fellows. Coro's been working with youth fellows each summer for the past 3 years through the city council program, the participatory budgeting program. And we worked with the youth fellows to come up with a process that will be put into play once the platform is working. And youth will be broken out into different groups. There'll be young people who will be coalition builders from the Coro, Youth Fellowship. There'll be coalition builders who will help us connect to organizations. There'll also be virtual facilitators who will help, with the idea generation process through virtual events, phone calls, texting. There'll also be young people serving as social media managers and interview youth workers to figure out, what needs are, pressing for young people, and then people to moderate on the platform, Decidim itself. So these were roles that the young people came up with over the summer that they'd like to see as, actualized during the youth demo. And then we've also been talking to agencies like some of the ones listed here, DYCD, MOCJ, DOP, Parks, Department of Health, to help us conduct outreach to young people, including networks serving LGBTQ and homeless youth, runaway youth. I think that's all the slides on the PB work. Oh no, there's more, sorry. The PB Advisory Committee has been incredibly active over the past year and just meeting monthly, and want to thank all of them and also the staff who's been working with them. And one of our major, I think, products that emerged through these meetings is that people talk through a set of principles that would shape and undergird future citywide programs, PB programs. And some of these include, and we sent you a more fuller, a detailed handout on the principles so you can look through them. But equity and inclusion, transparency, accountability, community ownership, collaboration, learning, and participatory democracy were some of the principles that a smaller subgroup came up with, and then these were brought to the larger advisory committee for vote. And there was an opportunity for the advisory committee to also give feedback at that point and to endorse the final list of principles. So we, again, want to really thank the advisory committee for going through that process and identifying these principles. And really the advisory committee for participatory budgeting is kind of in a tricky moment right now because their charter function is really to inform a citywide process. And since that citywide process has been suspended, we're trying to work creatively with them and be respectful of their time and energy to try to help us lay groundwork for what the citywide process will look like once the health emergency is lifted, and also need to be thinking about the budget crisis. And, we have no idea how that's going to impact future allocation for citywide participatory budgeting in the next year. So all of those things are, they are going to need to kind of factor those in as we develop a foundation for a citywide program. And we also wanted to share on the next slide some ideas for you to stay involved and get involved with the participatory budgeting pilots. You're welcome to contribute ideas for this. And if you have suggestions for orgs that we can connect with on recruitment, we're thinking about how we evaluate that demonstration project. And then for DeciDim, once it's launched, if you'd like to be involved in the user testing and participate in that part of it, you're more than welcome to. And then, like I mentioned, we're thinking about other opportunities to use this platform, including for community boards to collect resident input, such as on their need statements or budget priority statements, because there will be a module in DeciDim that will let you set up surveys. So that could be really exciting. And then we want to try to hold like 2 to 3 public events where we really think about what is the current narrative around participatory budgeting? How do people see it? What's their experience of it? And help keep it alive in people's minds while it's suspended. And we'd love to get your thoughts on how we can, what types of events you'd like to see. One of the things we're working on right now is Deputy Mayor Thompson is very interested in economic democracy and wealth building at the community level. So we're trying to see how we can connect the dots and maybe hold a public event around this where we get experts in economic democracy, people who've have experience with participatory budgeting as well, to come together and have create synergy between these ideas and areas of work. So that's one example. And then just think about what's the story of participatory budgeting that we'd like to share publicly, and how do we create opportunities for people who have experience with PB, powerful, empowering experience, to share their stories. So those are some of the things we're thinking about doing, and would love to get your involvement in that. I'm going to pause here to see if there are any questions on anything related to the participatory budgeting work. Awesome. Okay, can we go to next is the community boards. We did a bunch of trainings on parliamentary procedures, focused on motions and amendments, nominations and elections, and also minutes for secretaries, and really great response. 405 community boards attended those trainings. We had a lot more people sign up, but they weren't able to make it. But that's typical, right? For any training, you usually have more people sign up than actually attend. But think that this is a great number for us for this first round. And we might repeat these workshops. There's actually been demand to repeat the workshops and then develop others, such as focused on committee work. To how do we debate motions using parliamentary procedures? Some of that was covered in the earlier workshops, but I think there's ways to pivot and frame things differently and help people with kind of idea how to do sort of civil debates and things like that, civil discourse and deliberation in community board meetings. And then also we want to help build community boards' conflict resolution capacity. We had a preliminary conversation with the borough president's offices to see what they were offering in this area, and also connected with the OATH, the Office for Administrative Trials and Hearing, as a really great center for creative conflict resolution. We connected with them. We'd love to connect the community boards to the OATH Center because they offer mediation for internal conflicts to the community boards, for example. And we'll be going around to the borough board meetings and introducing OATH Center to the community board leadership. And then we're going to be piloting a training that will help community board members to identify and mitigate conflict through OATH Center for Creative Conflict Resolution. That'll be happening in the next couple of months. The other thing we've been doing is every staff member of CEC has been charged with attending at least one of the OMB agency and community board budget consultations that are happening right now, just to observe and listen and learn more about this process, which is an annual process that community boards have to go through. And it's a really interesting process for us to think about as a commission connected to participatory budgeting, because participatory budgeting, as the council has practiced it, is really a very specific process of generating ideas and voting on ideas. But a broader interpretation of participatory budgeting, I think, would include this kind of process that the community boards undergo, because it's allowing community boards and residents to have a better understanding of agency priorities every year and weigh in on those priorities through their submissions on the DCP portal. So as you all probably know, community boards are required to submit these annual requests for budget and needs to DCP through an online portal due on October 30th. And it's a very challenging time for everyone to work through this. The online portal was introduced, I think, last year. But I think what's been hard is just given COVID, it's hard to get people together. Not all community board members are equally proficient in terms of their, ability to access online materials. So we're trying to think about how we can help community boards with that part of it. And DCP planners are speaking to individual community boards who express concern about the tech needs to figure out how they can be helpful with that piece of it. And the other thing that I think we need to work on and think about how to do is that, again, public hearings, which will start up, I'm assuming they've started up already, but during the pandemic and in the spring and until July and August, community boards weren't really holding public hearings. They were having meetings, but not hearings. Starting now, they're actually required to do both. So during the public hearings, residents have the opportunity to have input into what the community boards are going to be submitting on the online portal. So we want to try to pay attention to the digital divide and helping community boards get the word out about their public hearings so that more people can participate in that process. On the next slide, I'm sorry, I should have gone through this before, but it's just a breakdown of how many people attended from across the boroughs for the parliamentary procedures trainings. And as you can see, it's pretty evenly sort of spread out across for motions and amendments. Some of the boroughs were collapsed, but we'll continue to offer these workshops and have also shared the presentation, with the community board district managers. Any questions on community board work or thoughts or comments? I'm curious if any of the folks who are community board leaders, members, borough president, appointees have any thoughts on this.
The district needs and community statement of community budget priorities. You're right, it is a very strange year to be doing that because the budget is in the process of being cut and then cut again. So whereas in previous years, and the online portal's been around for a while, by the way, it's gotten better over the last couple of years. Initially, we were in this terrible position of having to try to squeeze a 45-page document into a box. The DCP has responded to a lot of the feedback that we've been giving it over the years. This year, the budget priorities is almost a negative. It's what's the last possible thing to hold out for before it all gets cut because of the concerns about revenue shortfalls and so forth. So these are things that we will be voting on in October and November in order to submit by the deadline. I guess the interesting part of that is any opportunity to broaden community involvement. Although we one of the interesting things about COVID and online meetings via Zoom is that more people are participating via Zoom than usually do in person. And so we actually have the benefit of more community participation this year than we probably did in the last several. Happy to talk more about specific questions, but I don't want to occupy the floor.
Yeah, thanks so much for that. I mean, I do think we have heard from some boards like yourself where participation is really great from the community level, and I think there are other boards who are probably going to struggle with that. And I think for those areas, we've got to figure out again how to do it's probably in-person outreach. If people don't have access to online meeting tools, they should be able to call in. So hoping that we can work on that. And I think you're right. It is a great opportunity to really involve people who may have had constraints that prevented them from going to meetings in person, right? There are I remember way back we were talking about, for example, parents, with children, if they don't have the ability to, like they don't have babysitting or something, like how do we help those folks? So we're looking forward to this, and we'll also be attending the hearings at the community boards as well to see how those are going.
Yeah, if I could just jump in, one of the benefits of Zoom, or a couple of the benefits of Zoom as a platform for these things, is that you can phone in, and we do regularly get folks who phone in without a computer or a camera device, and that they are recorded. We live stream ours to YouTube, which then keeps them for I don't want to say forever, but they keep them for a good long time. And so we've had folks email us and say, in words or substance, I was watching your meeting a couple of days later and had these following questions. I I worry a little bit about people who watch my meetings after the fact as entertainment, but I'm grateful for the feedback just the same. But anyway, so those things actually, those opportunities do exist, and we try to make sure that folks know about that. But we are very much limited to outreach that is in some way digital right now. You only know about the telephone option if you look at our website or receive our email. And that does have a funny way of limiting the field with some pockets in our community. And just talking about my own district now, there are pockets in my district where we know that a paper flyer is the only way to get somebody's attention. So,
Yeah. Yeah, so we're trying to sort of think about, are there spaces, for example, in those kinds of areas where there's a digital desert to post flyers, if not actually hand them out, like maybe at the grocery store or in the laundromat, like different places where we know people will congregate. That's one suggestion.
Yeah, if I could suggest, by the way, a really effective way to do that has been the grab and go places for food from the Get Food program.
Yeah.
So we've done that, and we've encouraged other community organizations to do that as well, so that there's something that is, because there is a certain amount of synergy between the population that does not have robust digital access at home and the population that needs the grab and go services or the food bank services services. Anyway, that's a very fertile ground for spreading the word in alternative means alternative to digital.
That's really great. Thank you for that. Are there any other comments or questions on the community board work stream?
I was actually online with the training, and I found it to be very effective. I also spoke to some of my members who attended, and I think training like that was absolutely essential for community boards, and to have access to it. The only problem I find is that there wasn't enough advertisement for it from the board, so to get a lot of people involved. So I think if once you're doing this, if you can get them to advertise it a little bit more, or to do it every April, because that's when there are new board members coming on that are going to need to know the information about, Robert's rules, parliamentary things, just how to have meetings, the secretary, most definitely. But I thought it was a good presentation, and it really helped my board to think through and to fine tune a lot of the things that they were doing, and it was easier for them to do that once they had gotten that broad training. So that's my opinion.
Thanks so much. That's very heartwarming to hear that feedback. Andy, do you have anything to contribute as far as outreach or what we did and how we reached out? I know that sometimes, if you could just share how we did it, it's a great idea too.
We'll do absolutely. Good afternoon, all commissioner. Thank you, Donna, for your comment. It was actually quite interesting. On Monday, we actually held a debriefing meeting with the parliamentarians in Metro New York, and there actually was a comment that a number of board members had reached out to PMNY in regards to not knowing or not having enough information about the trainings, or getting the information training last minute from the district managers. So I think this time around, what we're going to look to do is email not only the district managers, but email the board chairs and email the board members directly as well. That way there's more outreach, and also incorporating the borough president's offices more in that outreach process. So it is something that has come up, and we will be fine tuning and incorporating more outreach for the next round of trainings.
Could I jump in on that? I think that's excellent and very important to have both the district managers and the chairs of the boards. Speaking as a chair of a board myself, and particularly the borough president's office. And if I could add, that it would be really the most helpful way to do that would be to make sure that the opportunities for training, the schedule, the roster, whatever it might be, is available before that month's borough board. Each of the 5 boroughs, borough presidents, convenes a meeting every month, except perhaps August, of the chairs of the community boards in that borough, along with representatives of the city council members whose districts touch that borough, and of course the borough president's staff herself. And so that's sort of one-stop shopping for the community board presidents, and it is exactly the kind of forum in which information like this is shared, because the borough president's office also tends to offer trainings of its own. I'm delighted to see that the trainings that are being offered through the CEC are different in kind and nature than those, so we're keeping up with the idea of adding without repeating. That's an excellent credit to everybody. But that's a great way to get that word out. With one email, you'll hit 12 Manhattan community boards, for example, as well as a number of council members, and you can get great penetration for that one shot.
Thank you for we will be attending more borough board meetings and borough cabinet meetings and district service cabinet meetings as well, as part of our outreach efforts.
Awesome. Thank you. So moving right along. Wanted to also share with you, we've been doing a bunch of internal work and, with the staff. And I really believe that as a team, as we're trying to promote civic engagement, we have to embody the principles that we want to see realized as we try to create a more inclusive public square. So we're trying to orient our minds and our work processes and programs, trying to identify principles and also embed those principles in our work. And one of the approaches that we really want to take is this kind of awareness of how conflict operates, right? And how is it that it's operative in the public square today? And we see a lot of the things that are not great about public deliberation and processes. It's, highly fractured, highly polarized, and we really believe that if we're going to do civic engagement work, we need to be mindful of all of that. So in order to do that and just build our own awareness, we went through this 3-part workshop, as I mentioned, with the Center for Creative Conflict Resolution, to just build some of that vocabulary on restorative approaches to conflict. And that training has, again, helped us, move forward to the next thing, which is that we want to offer a similar type of awareness raising, knowledge raising training for community boards, and then also trying to bring that consciousness into our other work. Another training that we've done with the staff is work with an MWBE called Sea Change Collective to have a better vocabulary and understanding of an anti-oppression approach to equity and social justice. And we did 5 3-hour sessions with them, and it really was an opportunity for us to practice deep listening and sharing with one another. And we're going to be continuing the work with Sea Change over the next couple of weeks to really integrate the principles we learned in the workshop into our actual program plans. We think that's, of course, trainings are so critical, but the after work is equally important. So we want to make sure we built into this engagement with Sea Change that after work too. And Sea Change is going to be helping us as the staff to come up with our core values that will drive or be the foundation for our work as we implement our mission. And we wanted to create a process where all of our stakeholders had a chance to hear those values and weigh in on them and come to some consensus about what they were. So what we're going to be doing is going through a process with Sea Change in a preliminary, first step workshop to identify our core values. We're going to share those out with the advisory committees, get their input, and then collect all of that and bring it to the commission and for you all to see what we've come up with and for your input and discussion. And we're so excited about this process of being grounded in values. We think it's really important, again, for our work and also just for creating a more inclusive public square, to know what our values are and to embed those in our programs. So that's an exciting thing that's happened during the pandemic. It's been, a very dark time for so many. And I think we really use that time to kind of go within and strengthen our foundation work and groundwork for the commission as a staff. And then on the next slide, I think, did we skip over community conversations? Before that? Or maybe maybe it's the last slide. It might have not been in. Is this the last slide, Francis?
I believe so.
Okay. I think all right. Anyway, I can talk about the community conversations. So in our initial launch, or when the commissioner appointments were announced, we had said we would do a listening tour. We started talking about that and how we would actualize that. And unfortunately, those plans could not materialize, partly because we're in a pandemic. So we've been pivoting, trying to think about how to do that differently. And where we landed and are working on right now is that we currently have a partnership with NYC Service Design, which is in the office. Let me just pull that up since I can't see it on the screen. But it is an NYC opportunity. And what we're doing with that is they are going to help us develop toolkits for how to hold conversations on civic engagement. And these toolkits will be co-designed with residents, and that's kind of their specialty. So the Service Design Studio creates ways for agencies to come together with the people who are benefiting from services, the residents, and to hear their input on insights into those services and shape the services accordingly. So we'll be working with residents to develop the toolkits for how to hold conversations. And we also came up with, again, trying to think about when we bring residents together in a conversation, what are some of the principles that we want to abide by in convening these gatherings? And we're talking about principles such as, just being straight, having straight talk, transparency, creating intentional hospitality, suspending assumptions, listening, creating ways that we have actionable input. So people are coming to these gatherings and conversations and can give practical input that will be acted on. And so it's not like a wasted opportunity for them. In the coming weeks, we'll be doing a workshop with Service Design Studio on human-centered design principles, and then working forward to develop these toolkits. And again, given the digital divide, we're thinking about tools we can use, such as Hustle or call-in approaches, so people can come to these gatherings and using different methods. And we do have a small grant through an agency partnership with NYC Service for $40,000. I got that right, Francis? $40,000 Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. To build a volunteer program for the commission. And we'll also be looking at other opportunities to support these community conversations, which are, the listening tour that we started talking about. So that's where we are with that. Any questions on that or the staff development?
My only comment on the staff development is that do whatever you need to do to keep the team you've got. They're great folks.
Yes, agree 100%. They're all amazing folks. Really hard workers, really thoughtful people, and very dedicated public servants. So I couldn't be more proud of the team that we have, and really appreciate them all as individuals. And I think in spite of not being able to work together in the same space, the full team was onboarded January. The last person was onboarded in January, and we went virtual in March. So we haven't really spent a whole lot of time in one another's company in person, and have just been getting to know one another through, meetings like this and on the phone. And I think these trainings have really helped the team to know one another as people as well. So, yeah.
I want to echo that point that Mark made, and I think it's also nice to know that we are sort of building the foundation of the commission through the staff.
Yes.
Because hopefully they will outlast us.
Yes. Hopefully, yes, for sure. One thing I forgot to mention, but that I'm also really excited about, is we're going to do some imaging work, a visioning and imaging workshop that will get us out of our right brain, and think about how we can dream about the commission's success and create a timeline for implementing our images and visions. So that'll also be coming up in the near future. And I've personally been through this kind of imaging work. It's very transformative. And I think will really help us at this time, like when we're, struggling with having hope, and hopefully energize us. And speaking of energizing us, I want to turn next to Yasmani to talk to us a little bit more about Yasmani's work. And I guess there was a version of the PowerPoint that had, a lot of great slides about Yasmani's work, but I think because we were worried we wouldn't have enough time. But Yasmani, you have the floor now, so please tell us a little bit more about what the Public Artist in Residence work will entail. And please feel free to talk through your own history, and then also what we're looking to involve the commissioners in.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Said, for your introduction. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm so excited to be here with you all. I often find this work to be, I feel like it's a privilege for me to get to do the work that I'm doing with the commission. I've done a brown bag lunch previously that happened on August 25th, but my hope is that over the next couple of months, I'm going to be doing monthly sessions where you can learn more about my practice and in depth understand how I'm thinking about the work that I'm doing with the commission. And it's going to be a space for everyone to actually give me feedback and participate in the creation of what we're doing together. And so in terms of the scope or the framework of what the Public Artist in Residence is with the commission, in partnership with the Department of Culture for the City of New York, I have been assigned for a 1-year period. It's a minimum of a year, working with the CEC. And currently, I'm within the process that we think of as research until the end of October. As part of this work, I am being given, or the funding for the project is $40,000. It's $20,000 for research, $20,000 for activation. I think it's really interesting to think about how that money gets used, not just as my payment for the work that I'm doing, but also to begin to think, gosh, what is the art piece that's going to appear in public space that's going to tell the story of who we are? And what is the relationship of that money to that work? There's a lot of opportunities to think about funding and support for funding outwardly once we decide what this thing that we're going to make together is. But I'm really excited to share that since August 3rd, which is when I begun, there's been so much work that I've been really learning about, and I've already been really involved, which includes the graphics for language access. It includes the graphics and branding for participatory budgeting for the youth. And so there's a lot that's already happening on the ground in terms of visuals and graphics that are being created. But I'm actually really interested in thinking about, gosh, those are under an umbrella of a bigger question, which is what I'm always invited to a community to be. And when I'm invited into a community, I always ask the question, who are we here and how do we make ourselves manifest? How do we express our values? How do we express who we are and what we stand for and how and what we're inviting people to participate in? And so I'm going to go through and I'm going to share a few slides. If we go to the next one, Francis, just a little bit about myself, and I'm going to share two quick projects that I think will give you an understanding of my practice in hopes that you will join me and participate in the upcoming Brown Lunch Bag sessions, but just a little bit about the way that I think and where I've been, so you have a little bit of a beginning with me. As an artist, I think of my work as being built on relationships. And what you see here is my family. That's my two sisters, my mom, Dolly, my brothers-in-law, and my partner, Danny. And then the two little people that are in this picture are Escher and Lucas, who are my two nephews. I think it's really important as a Colombian, as somebody who was born in the United States in Boston and who grew up between the South Florida and Medellin in Colombia. I'm always thinking about how is it that we begin relationships and how is it that we feed relationships to maintain a process and to really engage continuously with each other honestly. And so I share this, it's my beginning. This is the people that I come from, that I continue to relate to, that I continue to bounce ideas off of in my life. And I think this is my beginning. So it's a little bit of me. The next slide. A huge part of the way that I think about this art practice is, and I think this is helpful because oftentimes when people think about art, they think that it's an object like a sculpture in the middle of a space or a painting on a wall, like the painting by Diego Rivera that is behind Francis, right? And in my practice, I think that those beautiful objects are important, but they're a part of a system that actually connects us to each other. And so how is it that we can make things together that build relationships, where at the end we can look at something and be so excited that we created something that's spectacular, that people are talking about, that is creating conversation that we own together. And so a lot of what I do in my practice is, bring people into the room and say, how do we come up with bold, wild ideas of what's possible on this earth? And how do we go after those ideas together, learning about how to fundraise, how to invite journalists to come in to tell the story of what we're doing in process, and to always, again, think through, like, if we're always in process and we're always learning, how is it that collaboration can happen in that space? The next slide. And so here's an example. I over the past 5 years, I've been working long-term in Kenya, in Nairobi, in neighborhoods from Nairobi to Mombasa. And the project that I've been developing there since 2013 is called Color in Faith. Here's a gallery wall that asks the question, where does your faith live? And so when Obama was going to be visiting Kenya in 2013, CNN reported that he was visiting a hotbed of terror. And there were many people, friends, and communities that were very worried and that were really sad and upset that they have been titled a hotbed of terror as a blanket statement of who they are. And we began to think, gosh, what could we do that really transforms that idea and puts it on its head and tells different stories that bring dignity and honor all of the types of people that make up what Kenya is as a country. And so I created a gallery space in which I invited all kinds of people, ambassadors, community organizers, all kinds of folks to come in and actually converse with each other and ask each other questions. And so from that space, the idea of Color in Faith came to life, which was, how about we paint houses of worship yellow and paint them optimistic yellow, which is the name of the color. But how about we do that together and then tell people that what we're doing is transforming these buildings, these mosques, these temples, these churches into monuments, into sculptures that are in our urban landscape that speak to our common humanity, So the fact that people are coming together to create something that's really bold and unprecedented, how is it that transforms how we think about ourselves and the people who surround us? And so I often make drawings, and I often think of those drawings from the ideas of the people that are part of any given community. I think of those drawings as invitations to participate in the future that we're making together. And so what's so beautiful, the next slide, those are some of the drawings, but here is one of the churches that we painted in Kibera. What's really astonishing about this project to me has to do with the variation between buildings that are made of mortar and stone, buildings that are made of corrugated metal, like all kinds of spaces where people are showing up to worship. But look at what the power of what color can do. And so one of the elements of my art practice that's really critical is how does color transform our life and the meaning within it? Incredible what happens when you go and you build, you know, here's a church, but about 10 minutes away by walking is a mosque and a temple that are also yellow. And what we learned 4 years later is that there's paths that have been built between these buildings that feel safe, where children play, where there's playgrounds. And so it begins to alter the narrative of what that place is. Simple. The next slide. Up to now in Kenya, we've painted 16 buildings in 4 different communities in 2 different cities. There's so much in terms of what has happened within those communities. That's really what happened from place to place and how it informs the way they relate to each other and how they think of each other, how Muslims think of Christians, how Christians relate to Muslims, etc. Beginning with the idea of how do we ask each other, what do we want to have for lunch? What's the flavor of our favorite pizza? If that's our favorite food. Simple things combined with the notion of putting a paintbrush to a wall and then making things look beautiful and together binding ourselves, which I think is a huge part of this practice that I've been developing over the past 2 decades. Always, if we go to the next slide, the question is always, how is it that we can activate the imagination of all stakeholders to transform the way we think of ourselves and everyone who's around us? And to me, that's at the heart of how I build community. It's how is it that we exercise the imagination like a muscle that then leads us to change the way we think in relation to action? So that's a project in Kenya. I've done projects in Afghanistan where we gave away 10,000 pink biodegradable balloons to grown-ups one morning after Al-Shabaab made a bunch of attacks in downtown Kabul. I've worked in downtown Johannesburg and in Japan and in India. In every community, it's always thinking about how is it that we come together and create beauty, and how is it that aesthetic and joy affects the way we think and feel about ourselves. Now to bring it back home, over the past 3 years, I've been working with Integrate NYC, and it's an organization that's led by youth, where we have an advisory board of about 20 young people who come from all 5 boroughs. And over the past year and a half, we developed a project called Retire Segregation, where on the 65th year anniversary of Brown versus Board last year, on May 17th, hundreds of young people wearing this t-shirt and who produce this newspaper that tells the stories of how segregation impacts their individual schools was produced and created. And not only was the newspaper the artifact that they distributed, we distributed more than 25,000 copies of this newspaper across all 5 boroughs one morning. We then went on to have a party in Times Square where we celebrated the retirement of segregation, because 65 is the number at which people who are going to retire. And what's really beautiful is that that idea comes from a middle school student, Benji, who was in 6th grade, who raised his hand and said, isn't 65 the time when people retire? What if we throw segregation a retirement party? And so what's astonishing is, if we go to the next slide, that when we look at what that party felt and looked like, and the fact that these teenagers appeared on ABC News, PBS NewsHour, they were in the New York Times, Washington Post, the LA Times, wearing and talking about this newspaper and talking about how they were a part of contributing to the color, the joy, and the flavor of these narratives, so driven by these individuals, and so beautiful that we can collaborate and build narratives that belong to all of us together. And so I wanted to show you these 2 projects just to give you a little sense of what's possible. If we go to the next slide, Francis. One of the big questions and the thing that immediately jumps out to me when I think about the last month and a half or the last 2 months of working with you all is, gosh, the opportunity is enormous to create the narrative, the storytelling tradition of the Civic Engagement Commission of the City of New York, because we have the most storied city in the history of the earth. So when I think about building our uniforms, our t-shirts, our stickers, all of the elements, all of our gatherings, how is it that they're a party? And more recently, I've begun thinking, gosh, if the CC was throwing the most fabulous party there ever was in New York in 2021, how would we go about finding who is on that guest list? How do people find out about this party so they can sign up to join us? But there's just an enormous opportunity to create the identity of our commission and to build a foundation that speaks about all of the elements that bring dignity to the people we're charged with representing. And so here's a little bit of, a sample of one of the t-shirts that I designed over the past couple of weeks with Gagan and Francis towards language access. But there's just an enormous opportunity to think about how is it that each one of our work streams is branded and has an identity and a storytelling tradition that is beautiful, that is compelling, that is warm, all of these things that I think, when we think about city governance, I think in my experience, I have not seen how joy shows up in meetings like this one. How is it that there's activation of pleasure and beauty? Because to me, those elements are inherent in building systems that are sustainable. And so I very much offered before in my last presentation that if there's any commissioners who are interested in having one-on-ones with me, I had one with Amy Breedlove and it was really productive. If anybody's interested in chatting with me one-on-one, I'm here. I am beginning to really put together this draft of a proposal for this year-long project and how I see it. But I'm a collaborator, and I believe that it's going to take every single one of us to turn the way the system works. And so I really welcome conversation, ideation, brainstorming, and lots of love. So I thank you for your time, and I very much look forward to hopefully seeing you during my brown bag lunches. On October 13th, we're going to be talking about color. On the following one, we're going to be talking about interdependence, and on the following one, we're going to be talking about joy. And so those are the pieces that I'm excited to share and go more deeply into in my own practice. If anybody has any questions or comments.
Okay, if there are no comments, I think we're going to open the floor for public comments. Anyone who is interested in offering a public comment can unmute themselves. Just a note for folks who have dialed in using telephones or cell phones, you are also unmuted.
Okay, so if there are no questions or comments from the commissioners or from the members of the public who are with us, we can go ahead and begin to adjourn the meeting. So I'd like to see if anyone can make a motion to adjourn.
Actually vote on that amendment?
Sorry?
The amendment. Did we vote on it?
We did.
Right. We did.
Yes, we voted on the amendment that was amended. And we approved it, in the amended version.
Okay, so I'll move to adjourn.
Brilliant. Anyone want to second that?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Wonderful. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining us. So I'm going to carry this motion and we're adjourned for today. We look forward to seeing you again and being in touch with you in between. Thank you so much for joining us. Take care.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Mm.